I'm Jake DeBryan.
And I'm Doug DeBryan.
And we're here in central Mahaska County in Iowa, standing in a rye field that we're going to eventually here make forage for our cows.
We started using cover crops a little over 5 years ago. Originally, we did it to harvest in the spring, and then we noticed that I was a little worried about it because I thought maybe we were going to hurt our bean yield that year, but that field actually ended up outperforming the other beans by about 5 bushels that year, and so we did it again the following year, and that year it wasn't as good in the spring because it was wetter when we harvested the cover crop, when we harvested the rye. And so I was a little worried about the compaction issues there. And so, but then when we harvested that fall, the bean crop, it was once again, it outperformed our other beans. And so I guess that was kind of our aha moment. That's when we realized, we should be doing this strictly as a cover crop on more of our acres. So we've been building up acres ever since then, doing more and more each year.
I would say, using cover crops, you hold your soil, and the roots will hold your nitrogen too. It captures it in the plant, and as that plant gets terminated and dies, your nutrients still are on top of the soil. They're where all the microbes and the earthworms can still take those nutrients, to where the crops can use them still. Where if you don't have cover crops and you run into those saturated soils, your nutrients can seep out and you'll lose them. So that's a very big aid using cover crops. And the holding of the soil too, you don't see near the erosion, and it makes the soil, I think, more forgivable too, because the roots are more fibrous. It just keeps that soil, just gives it more tilth when you're no-tilling into it. It's just some of the things that we find, I think.
One thing that we did after the no-till is we started using a chisel that was kind of a no-till inline chisel, and it would break the soil up underneath but leave the residue on top. And we just thought that thing was the greatest thing. We would run that through, and that ground was just mellow, and we just thought it was so nice and mellow. That was perfect for the seed is what we thought. And it was good at first to get the water to go down, but I think we realized over time that every time you pull that chisel through that ground, you're just kind of tearing that ground up more and pulverizing that soil. And over time that you do that too much, and that soil just starts to kind of turn to dust. And when you add rain to dust, it just once it dries, it just kind of turns into a brick. And so what we thought was really doing a good job, and did do a good job for many years, eventually started to we realized it wasn't too good for the soil. And so we started going to the no-till completely, and with the cover crops, and then the cover crops can do that chiseling for you. You can get the roots going down, and then the rain has a way to get down, and also you're feeding the organisms and microorganisms in that soil, and that's really good for the soil health.
Yeah, soil is a live ecosystem. I mean, you got your earthworms, your good bacterias. Every time you open up soil, like say when you're out running the field finisher in the spring, you have that smell in the air. It's a good smell, but that's a smell of all those organisms dying. You're tearing up the earthworms, the bacteria that produces the good chemicals. That's the smell you're smelling, and you want that to stay in the soil. This stuff really holds the soil. These roots are very, they go down a long ways, which we'll look at some with the spade here in a bit. So then that's where we started going over several more acres, and we're about to the point to where we're going to do every acre with rye. So it really does have enough value in our operation to keep using it. Okay, so here's a good soil plug. You got the ryegrass right there, or the rye, cereal rye there. See how the soil just flakes apart, and all the roots going through there. Don't see any worms right now, but this is how no-till soil is. So last year we got 5 bales an acre off of per acre off of a 30-acre field that we did. Each bale weighed an estimated 2,000 pounds, and that was with the moisture. And I calculated it at 40% moisture, which converts to 1,200 pounds of dry matter. So then that comes down to about 6,000 pounds of dry matter per acre. Machine rates, you take in about $12 for the air seeding, or the drilling, putting the seed in the ground. About $12 to mow it. And when we do this scenario for forage, we use 2 bushels of rye. Where if you're doing just cover crop, you're shooting for the 3/4 to 1 bushel. So you have a little extra seed dollars amounted into doing it for forage. So your total cost between the equipment usage and the seed comes to, it's about $1,260 over the 30 acres. Then you got 150 bales, and it costs $25 to get it baled and then put in a tube line wrap. That's what we did last year. So between all of the the baling and the equipment, I came up with a figure of $5,000, and then your 6,000 pounds of dry matter per acre by the 30 acres, you come to about 90 tons of dry matter, which you take all of your cost of production divided by all of the tons that you got, it comes to about $55 per dry ton. So you take that into, if you're going around buying hay, you're making it on your own ground, your bales are right by your cows, and you're not using up extra acres to produce feed. So you go right back in and you have a crop of soybeans. And like I said too, your chemical cost, you're shaving off an estimated $35 right off of your production for the soybeans. So you can calculate that into your forage or off of your production for soybeans. So that's where it really aids in keeping our cow-calf operation easy and the cost of production low. My initial reason was because I thought, well, that's a pretty easy way to make a lot of feed in a matter of 2 days and virtually be done making feed for all the cows. It reduces on our chemical usage too. So when we come in here and mow off the rye and put it up in bales or silage, we trim down to just 1 pass for spray. So you're talking about, you're shaving off $35 just right there on spray. So that really reduces your cost of production too.
I was just going to say, as far as weed control, also that having that cover crop there helps suppress the weeds. I think the first year you do it, you're not necessarily going to have less weeds, but I think it's going to keep the weeds smaller. It's going to suppress those weeds, and so your herbicides are going to be more effective then, and you can possibly cut back on your herbicides then. That's something that with the no-till, we kind of had the opposite. We almost had to use more herbicides because you didn't have any tillage taking the weeds out, and so bringing in the cover crops is a good addition to that no-till system then. But then I think over time, if you continue to use the cover crops year after year, then I think you're actually going to see the number of weeds go down, especially if you have a large enough area that you're not having weeds blow in from the neighboring field. So I think you can actually get the number of weeds down too. So as far as challenges that we've had, it really hasn't been as challenging as I thought it would be. Probably the biggest challenge that we've had is just getting it in there on time. We have had, I know we did some cover crop into bean ground that went to corn, and we didn't get it sowed very early last fall, and we had a cold fall, so we didn't get a lot of growth on it there. And then same thing this spring. It was cold, so we didn't get a lot of growth. So I don't know how much benefit we got out of it this past year, because then we wanted to spray it early before we planted the corn. So that's I'd say that's our main challenge, is trying to get it in on time so we get some good fall growth out of it.
We're standing here in a field that we drilled into rye that was sprayed the day of drilling it. If you can see around it, it was actually pretty good height. Obviously it's died down some now, but it was close to knee high. You do use a little more Roundup. You'd call that kind of a later kill. When it's getting to be that late, you use the 44 up to 50 ounces of Roundup per acre. Early kill, you're into the 32 ounces or less. But this, we feel like we have the best results with weed control, and you get your best bang for your buck with the roots too, to hold soil.
And it's really great in the middle of the winter to look out there and see green out in the fields, if you don't have the snow cover over it, and to think that maybe the whole neighborhood might look like that someday, and to know you know that you are saving the soil and that everybody's doing that, working on that. And of course, like I say, there's lots of different ideas out there, and every farmer, I think, is trying to do everything he can. It's just a matter of figuring out the right one, and hopefully everybody can get on the same page and we can work on this together.